Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope that you're doing well. This weekend we had a bit of a game day at the local LGS, playing 100 Kingdoms myself, and went up against one of our other local 100 Kingdoms players. So it's going to be the mirror match, the 100k versus the 100k, and when I showed up for the game, you know, we were sort of sorting out our lists, and I made a point of trying to play not exactly the same list that he did, but both of us have a very heavy collection of cavalry. Pretty typical 100 Kingdoms at the moment. It's a bit of a meta thing at the moment that it's generally easier to win with stuff like Ashen than it is to win with, you know, your blocks of heavy infantry and the smaller stuff, especially with the scenario changes, the changes to scoring. It's not really easy or viable to spam lots and lots of light units anymore with 100 Kingdoms. Hopefully that changes soon, but we're going to take a look at this. My army list mostly sort of favors the Priory Commander battle group with the 2 Crimson Knights and Ashen Dawn, but I've got the Theist Priest, which he doesn't have. My opponent does have 1 Crimson Tower, 1 Ashen Dawn, but it's more about the Imperial officer for him. He's got the Gilded Legion, whereas I've got the Noble Lord with the Household Guard. And we are playing the mission Bullwark. So this is basically 2 flanks, and on your left you have a circular zone which is guarded by a friendly objective, and on the other side your opponent's objective is blocking you from scoring, so you have to kill it before you can score, and there's a neutral objective in the middle which is worth 3 VPs. There is 2 points for the enemy Warlord, but you can't get it for like the double 100 Kingdoms Warlord, so there is that. And the number of points you get for seizing the zones bounces back and forward between either side, so that makes it interesting. A few little moving parts there. So going over the list, we've got my one here, which is Priory Commander, no upgrades. Crimson Tower, both regiments have standard bearers, but the Ashen Dawn don't. Quite expensive, obviously, to include that. Noble Lord and Household Guard, I don't really rate this very highly as a setup. I mean, the basic thing to do here is Armament of Dominion, or you can go Steel Standard if you prefer, or even Regalia of the Empire, but I prefer Armor of Dominion. Weapon Master Graceful Combatant is really the only equipment you can possibly give to him, really, that really works for the weapon arts, and the Eccentric fighting style just plays into that very, very well. And then I've got 6 Household Guard. There is a bit of an argument, I guess, where, you know, the better way to do this is to have more Household Guard than that, like 8 or 9. And really just go all in on the infantry, where you've got 3 blocks like the Household Guard, Gilded Legion, and Militia, but I'm still not really seeing it. I feel like until things change, until we get a patch, cavalry is really your best bet. But I'm running this setup really just to deviate from my opponent and have something different so that it feels like we're not playing a completely, like entirely mirror match. Then you come down to the Theist Priests, and of course Elysian Fragment focused, and Militia have Order of the Shield. Servite obviously better for 5 points, but I didn't really feel like I could spare that 5 points, and Errant of the Order of Shield at least gives you the attacks which you're going to have smite on with the Elysian Fragment, so I do like that, but Servite makes them a bit more durable. Couldn't afford 2 units of Mercenary Crossbowmen, and I don't own 2 units anyway. I'm going to assemble the next one later this month. But the Bowmen are just a great speed bump. They're great at screening, and that can be quite useful for a cavalry list to have something which screens your expensive regiment so you can actually rush through your bowmen, or you can have the bowmen pin something in the flank and you charge them. They can actually be worth a lot for just 75 points there. Let's just have a run through of my opponent's stuff. So he's got, again, you know, a limited army collection. He doesn't own every model that's available to 100 Kingdoms, so we're just sort of playing what we have here. Imperial Officer, Armor of Dominion, Brace for Impact, On Your Feet, and Gilded Legion. He's got the Drill Master. I personally feel like you barely even need the Drill Master, but he is playing Veterans, whereas I'm playing Relentless Drill, so that's another big difference. He really likes Veterans, so he's going up to Clash 4. I feel like Veterans isn't really even needed for Gilded Legion, because a lot of the time you're just going from 3 to 4 with Inspire anyway. You don't necessarily need the reroll 6s, and the points you pay to have the Drill Master and the clash there is not wonderful, and the Relentless Drills give you more supporting attacks, and you're going to be forming your Gilded Legion in a sort of a structure where they are a bit deeper than they are wider. At least I prefer to anyway, to get them around the battlefield. So that's my own preference, but this is what he's running. Basic Crimson Tower with Standard Bearer, Ashen Dawn, as you do, and he really likes the Noble Lord package, where he's got all of the upgrades and all of the Household Knights and all Veterans. This is the maximized Noble Lord, and then the Veteran Squires and a couple more small units there to support them. So let's get into this game, shall we? Right, so just give me a second. Where is our match? Here it is. Alright, so the game starts with lights, as you can expect. You can see my Ashen on the bottom right-hand side here, which, to be honest, they are not on the board yet. We've got Crossbowmen who are just showing up right at the back. These guys are just going to wait. I'm going to hope that he moves to my side of the table with his squires here, and then I can countercharge him with some Crimson Towers or something like that. These guys just really want to wait until the later game, and that could be a much smarter thing than than just shut them up onto the hill where they're going to get charged. Maybe they'll get a couple of wounds, but they'll get attacked. So you've got to be a bit restrained with them, I feel. My opponent bringing his Crossbowmen and his squires opposite them on that side of the battlefield. Then we go turn 2. So I'm picking the Noble Lord and Household Guard to come in automatically, and then I roll to bring in the Bowmen, and that's it. No other troops arrive at this stage. So he's got these guys here, which he decides wisely not to charge onto my side of the table. So that's pretty cool. Over on the left-hand side, I've got the Bowmen just moving up here onto the other objective. Note that this zone here is the one that I control. So you imagine a circle around it, 4.5-inch diameter, and this little objective zone belongs to me. He's going to have to destroy it before he can score. So he's moving his crossbowmen onto the hill here, which is also a forest. It's a forested hill, and he should be able to shoot this close range to do some wounds on that objective. I then move my Household Guide opposite that group. I want to be able to move these guys up really quickly to that objective because it's defended by my objective marker. These guys will hopefully camp on the zone and get some scoring happening. He sees that and decides to counter with his own Noble Lord. His Noble Lord is better than mine because it's on a horse, and he has the full list of upgrades here. So if they charge me, I will have the reroll 6s from my Supremacy ability, but I will lose most of, if not all of, my Household Guard. With that in mind, I really want to have something which can counterpunch. If I trade my Household Guard for his Noble Lord's unit, that's not terrible. You know, we're both Warlords. We both pick up the points. His unit's slightly more expensive than mine. I'd prefer, it'd be game-winning for me if he just rolls really low and doesn't wipe out my unit, and then I countercharge him with some Crimson Tower Knights and destroy him. But you can't always guarantee that. So, over here, he's moving up his crossbows, not really able to achieve much, and then we go to turn 3. So, I now am bringing on the Priest and some of the Crimson Tower Knights, 1 unit of Ashen Dawn. I think there's pretty much just 1 unit of Ashen Dawn which hasn't shown up at this point. And we want to go first with the characters to delay time, and the Household Guard as the very last unit, because we don't want to obviously move forward and then get charged by the Knights, so they have to go last. Right, so he moves on with his crossbows up here, tries to get a few shots off on the Bowmen, maybe picks off a couple of wounds there. The Squire's still not doing very much. I'm moving to the left here. So what's going on is I deployed here, and I'm just moving to the left, just to centralize these guys a bit more, and really just not engage them. He's committed two units. I've committed 1. I don't really want that fight to go ahead until later in the game. On the left here, so the Crimson Tower Knights arriving. This is really important position for them because it means they're behind the hill, the Knights can't see them. If the Knights march charge against the Crimson Tower, I can flank charge them with my Household Guard and absolutely wipe them out. If he goes into my Household Guard, I'll hopefully live with 1 or 2 stands, and the Crimson Tower Knights will flank them and destroy them. The Knights, that is. So he's coming on with some men-at-arms. This is coming in behind the crossbowmen because he wants a scoring unit. After the Knights have finished fighting, he doesn't expect them to live forever, so the men-at-arms coming on to hold that objective after the crossbows have eliminated the marker that's on it. Over here, my Priory Commander and the Crimson Tower Knights moving through the center of the battlefield. I'm thinking that carefully with these guys, they are reasonably maneuverable. So what I can do is if he commits everything to the center, I can just simply pull back, pull back, pull back. I've got the crossbows there ready to shoot into combat. They aren't really under assault yet from the right-hand side squires. If he doesn't deploy anything in the middle, I should be able to move through and actually get a march charge onto those crossbowmen in the distance and start to threaten that right-hand objective. But the main thing I want to accomplish here is to get him to commit to the battlefield before I've got everything on, and then I can try and stack one side. Over here, so we've got his crossbows. You can see another shot of the Crimson Tower Knights. I then have the Knights of the Ashen Dawn coming in behind this hill. They are there so that the crossbows can't shoot them at the moment. So what I'm thinking about here is that if he shows up on the side with his Ashen Dawn and his Gilded Legion and maybe his Priory Commander unit there, if these guys all show up in this flank, then this is all I'm going to use. I'm not going to commit anything else there. Everything else of mine is going to go on the left-hand side, and I'm going to start scoring probably more quickly than he does, and I can also move through the center. And if he doesn't commit enough to the side, these Ashen Dawn can actually move over and eliminate both of these units, which is quite useful. And behind the hill, they shouldn't really run into any trouble. It's unusual to see Ashen Dawn played so defensively, but I feel like I just need to wait to see where he sort of puts his units. So these Household Knights here are just finding an opportunity to really just feel out the opponent here, trying to gauge the range. Then we bring in the Militia. I'm expecting more heavy stuff in the middle at this point. I think that this unit here is a wonderful counter to the Gilded Legion or the Crimson Dawn or even the Ashen Dawn if you can get the opportunity. So I'm hoping that if I can pin him down with the unit on the right here or the unit on the left, these guys will get a really amazing turn with the Elysian Fragment, but they can be outplayed. It's quite difficult to get that super turn off where you activate the Priest, put down Blessed, activate the Shard, the unit charges, they've got rerolls, etc., they've got Smite. It's quite hard to set that up, so sometimes you just have to settle for what you can get. But the other thing too is that as they move towards this objective, they can use Holy Fire because he's got focus. He's a very good blaster priest here, and he can actually take out these units with his spells before they can kill the militia, and I'd be content with that. So he has decided to deploy his Gilded Legion. The thinking here is that these guys have Double Time and Vanguard, so they come onto the board very quickly, and in his next turn, he can actually march a good 16 inches, putting them right in front of me, and then if I charge him, I'll lose. If he charges me, I'm also in trouble. So a very expensive unit here, and my unit doesn't cost quite as much, but he wants to use the Pike Formation counter there, and it's a good play, but my thinking is that it could work out in my favor given that this unit is then not going to contest either of the zones. There's this one over here, and there's one further onto this side of the table. If this unit just holds this unit up for a while, then it's going to be my Ashen Dawn versus the rest of his army, and I should be able to win that one. I suppose I do have the option of bringing my militia over to the side and trying to beat them, but it might not even be worth doing that. So over here we have the Household Guard. I am reforming and pushing forward a bit. Part of the reason for doing this is that it means that he's got more of a hard time getting units in contact with my regiment without touching the Noble Lord who has Armor of Dominions. That's one thought. Also, if he does a charge clash, there's going to be some knights which don't really get the frontage and won't be able to get actually get their clash value, their attacks value, and it'll be support value only. And it brings me very close to the bowmen as well. If the bowmen get the jump on the knights, they can actually get in the way, and the knights will be blocked, and then I can get into close combat without them actually having their impact hits. So it's a bit of a gambit here. On to turn 4 now. So Militia have to go first because if I win the roll, they're going to get in the way of the Knights, and the Knights are not going to be able to charge clash the Household Guard this turn. I've got the opportunity to march, charge, and tie them up, which would be pretty much game winning for me if that can happen. So we want the Household Guard to go last. If he does activate first and attacks the Household Guard, they could get very badly mauled, if not wiped out. So if I survive with like 1 or 2 stands, I want the Noble Lord to be able to rally, and then the Household Guard can actually attack as the very last thing that they do. Okay, so he does win the roll, and he does go for the charge. He does make the roll, and we are on with the dice rolls. So it's pretty serious. You've got 5 knights with 4 impact hits each, so that's 20 plus the Noble Lord's 4, and they're going to hit almost everything thanks to Clash 4 with the charge or Elephant's Roar and the reroll 6s. And then I am Defense 3 going down to 2s. I don't get the Armor of Dominion on the Brutal Impacts, that's only for Cleave and Smite, and then I'm rerolling 6s for armor. So you're expecting me to block maybe a bit over a third of that damage, and then take resolve checks. So he'd have to spike the roll kind of low, and I'd have to roll armor saves and resolve checks quite well to make this happen, but it didn't go my way. The dice were slightly favored his way, and he does manage to wipe out the Noble Lord's unit, which is fine. The Noble Lord does manage to attack back with his, obviously his eccentric fighting style and his halberd, and he does manage to kill one knight, so it's a really good way of actually taxing that play a little bit. And then, of course, we have the charge in the flank with the Militia Bowmen, who roll like crazy, by the way. These little peasants come in there with their little sharp sticks and actually kill another knight, which is hilarious. And, of course, now his unit here is pinned, and for those of you who may have forgotten, I actually have a unit of Crimson Tower Knights just right to the corner of this photo down here, and they're just going to be able to charge in the front and wipe out these knights perfectly. So it is a trade, and I'm happy with that. I mean, the knights are worth more than the Noble Lord on foot, so this will give me a great opportunity on this flank. We then have the militia moving up, so I can fire at the crossbowmen with the holy fire as well. So he comes in behind with the men-at-arms. He unfortunately misplayed this a little bit, couldn't quite get the men-at-arms to overtake the crossbows, so that's not great positioning. The priest now fires off with holy fire. He's got focused, does a ton of hits onto the crossbows. They take resolves as well, and they're reduced to just one stand left who is damaged. So he then brings his Ashen Dawn in on this flank. What's going to happen here is that you're going to see the Crimson Tower Knights charge the Noble Lord's unit and finish him off. That's going to leave me with just the Bowmen and the Knights here, and then I can bring in another unit here if I want to, but if I can deal with these guys, that's a pretty heavy commitment. It's the strongest unit. If I can deal with them, I'm going to be able to score here for the rest of the game, which should hopefully put me in the lead. On the right-hand side, though, I'm now going to move up with my crossbows just to plink off at his ones, and because he's now committed as Knights of the Ashen Dawn, his only unit left to bring into play is his Priory Commander with Crimson Tower Knights. You can sort of see them sitting off the table over here next to him. So if he deploys them here, which I think would be a decent spot for them, that means that I kind of have to be careful about charging these guys in here. But if he puts them somewhere else, the Ashen Dawn can clear up these two units. This unit's presumably coming this way, so it's not going to be a problem. And then the Ashen Dawn can actually score on that part of the table. So that's the game plan. So I want to prepare for that by moving these guys up a little bit to assist them. So he does shoot back at me, does kill one stand, unfortunately. A little bit better rolls on the shooting from his side. We then have, as expected, my Crimson Tower Knights charging his Noble Lord. His Noble Lord is already activated, so he doesn't get the die fighting thing. And of course, this unit absolutely blitzes the Household Knights and wipes them out. So I decide here to bring in my second unit of Ashen Dawn opposite his. Theoretically, one unit of Ashen Dawn should beat another if you have the support of two other regiments to pin them down and to flank them. So that's what's going to happen here. I've got Crimson Towers and Ashen Dawn and Bowmen. They should be enough to swamp his unit of Ashen Dawn and kill them. And then with the priest being able to mop up that smaller unit of men-at-arms quite easily, I should then have this flank under wraps. So here is the key deployment here. It is his Priory Commander, and he's opted to put them right here. He's going into this objective in the middle, and what this means is that if he comes through this way, he can easily destroy this unit. The charge from those knights will easily wipe out this unit, which is going to be massive, and these guys can come in and wipe me out here. So he's going to do very well in the center of the table, but I'm about to take both flanks, and that should put me well ahead in the scoring lead overall. So it'll be a matter of whether he can actually mop up later in the game, and that makes me feel very good. I feel like this really puts me in the lead, this deployment here, because it's going to mean that I get away with a lot of scoring before he can wrestle back the commitment to material. And with my militia and my other Crimson Tower Knights with the Priory Commander, I do have the option of just pulling back for a bit. So over here, that's what I do. I'm reforming and I'm marching backwards a little bit, and that's just to give me maximum frontage here. If he charges with his Gilded Legion in the next turn after he double times up to me, I could have the Supremacy going, which gives me Blessed, which would mean that the Knights would tank the Gilded Legion for a little while, and that would just slow things down for a bit in the center, giving me an opportunity to take the flanks with the scoring side of things. So over here, we've got the Militia Bowmen, I think, really just getting prepared to take on the Knights of the Ashen Dawn in the background. My own Ashen Dawn on the right-hand flank, double marching up here. And I figure that next turn I can march charge the Squires if I want to, causing the impact hits, probably severely crippling them. He will then shoot me at point-blank range in the flank with his crossbows. But even if he kills one guy, in my next turn, I can actually reform and charge the crossbows. There should be no way that 1 unit of squires and 1 unit of crossbows is able to defeat the Ashen Dawn. I should be able to mop up both units and have one, if not two, stands of them left alive just to camp that zone, and then we're looking great. So, as predicted, his Gilded Legion double march up here into the forest opposite my Crimson Tower Knights. What I thought he could have done, to be honest with you, I thought that he could have moved over here and set up in a position where he's actually got part of them sort of sitting there. He doesn't really want, I don't really want to attack him with my Ashen Dawn because then he can actually flank me with these guys. They're opportunists. He can shoot into combat with these guys, and he would eventually beat me up here, and then he could just march onto that zone, and he would be winning at that point. So, what we're going to do first is we're going to activate the Mercenaries as the first card because they are going to actually double march or march charge into the flank of this Gilded Legion, making it a lot harder for him to come after the Crimson Tower Knights, or at least get in the way. I don't want him to obviously clash and wipe me out and then charge me, so I want to go first with them, and then everybody after that is just going to be getting ready to do their thing. The militia is coming last, just because if he comes a lot further forward with his Crimson Tower Knights, I want the opportunity to charge him with Smite. So this is the battlefield, as you can see here. Let's walk through it. So left-hand flank looking very good for me. This unit is isolated. They're going to get boxed in by these 3 units here. These guys are eventually going to get hit by Holy Fire here, but the problem is if he marches and then charges with his Crimson Tower, that's devastating because he's going to get so many kills here, and of course the resolve checks are going to be awful with Terrifying. But note that he does not actually have Priory Commander Warlord. He's running a Noble Lord plus Imperial Officer Warlord, so he won't get Blessed, which is very, very interesting. This turn will be probably the Supremacy for me, so I'll actually have Hardened on my Ashen Dawn and Blessed on my Crimson Tower Knights, which would be great, which is a big advantage, and that's one of the reasons why the Priory Commander Warband is just so good. So yeah, I am in danger here. If he wins the roll, these guys charge in here, and he might go after me with his Crimson Tower Knights there. On the right-hand flank, if he's going to indeed be doing that, the Ashen Dawn come over here and eliminate these 2 units. So we're going to see both flanks go to me in the medium run of things. So what we've got here is that he wins the roll, but he goes with his squires. This is a blunder, in my opinion. I don't think that he should have gone with this. The squires do absolutely 0, like 1 wound total to the Ashen Dawn, which is like, why would you do this? So the Ashen Dawn are now going to clash without inspiring and charge the Crossbowmen. It's just going to be horrible. So he's just sort of giving it to me here. I really didn't expect that. I thought that the first card really should have been the Gilded Legion or the Crimson Tower Knights, and then just try and take an advantage that way. But he goes after the Crimson Tower Knights, so the Ashen Dawn doing really nothing there. So what I get to do here, even though I didn't win the roll, is I still get to go ahead with my plan, which is to double march the crossbows right in front of the Gilded Legion, meaning that they cannot charge my Crimson Tower Knights. There's no space for them to get past. So what they'll have to do here is they'll have to attack the crossbows or sort of reform and just move past, and that way I'm not going to get attacked this turn, which is quite a big deal. Over here, he's got crossbows, which are taking a wound off of this objective, which is currently on my side here. I then have the Militia Bowmen, which march right in front of the Ashen Dawn. This is a great setup here because it means that if he does charge in to wipe me out here, I've got my own Ashen Dawn on the flank. That's just lights out. And if he does anything else, well, he's just delaying, and these guys can then charge past, and these guys can come through, and I can eventually set up a way to knock them out. So he's now moving in with his men-at-arms onto the objective here. Again, I've got the objective locked down with my own marker. He's going to have to keep shooting at it with his crossbows to do that, and he's right in front of the militia here. So if I do charge his men-at-arms, I'll probably get wiped out by his Crimson Tower Knights, but that's okay. On this side, the Ashen Dawn attack back against the squires and mow them down, and then march over here in front of the crossbows. Perfectly happy for him to shoot at me with his crossbows. We do have Hardened this particular turn, and the next turn we're going to blast the objective and kill them. In fact, what happened here is that I clashed onto the squires and then charged the objective rather than the crossbows, because they're heavies and they can do 2 wounds to the objective, and then next turn I can clash it and then charge into the crossbows. So what he opts to do here with his Priory Commander and his Crimson Tower Knights is to charge clash the objective in the middle of the table. I wasn't expecting this. I do feel like this is a little bit of a blunder because he had the perfect opportunity to march charge into the Militia instead, which I do believe probably would have wiped them out, and it puts his powerful unit in the middle of the table where they can actually start hurting my back line a bit more and other parts of the battlefield. But although this nets him 3 points and puts him in the lead in terms of scoring by taking out that objective in the middle, it wastes a turn and gives me a chance to actually do something with my Militia and my Theist Priest, which is to knock out his men-at-arms. He has played this well enough that the men-at-arms are actually blocking the charge from the Militia into the Crimson Tower Knights, so you obviously don't want them to get smite out of the way. But if I just charge here and knock these guys out, then I might even have an opportunity to tie them down with the charge in a future turn. So I feel like he's just giving me a bit too much room here. Over here, we have the other Crimson Tower Knights on my side, marching and charging through the Bowmen into the Knights of the Ashen Dawn. So, because this is the Supremacy turn, we do get Blessed. We're going to use it all in the rerolls. I don't care about losing the Crimson Tower Knights at this point. In fact, I want him to kill 1 or 2 stands so that my own Ashen Dawn can make it into combat. This does eliminate 1 stand of his side, so it's going to be even easier for me to finish him off. And then on this side here, we have the Gilded Legion reforming and then charging, so I'm taking no damage here, but this allows him to slip past the crossbows, which were blocking him, and puts him in a spot here where he can maximize his support attacks. He does not have Relentless Drill, he has Veterans instead. This is one sort of situation where I really prefer Relentless Drills, of course, and he spent the points on Drill Master, so he's got more attacks, but that's not really going to affect him until next turn. So it's really good for me here because it's just going to be a very slow process of killing my Crimson Tower Knights. He's not going to get much done. And because I didn't really need to use Blessed on my armor saves this turn, I can just use it on my attacks. Over here, okay, so we have the Crimson Tower Knights retaliating against, we have the Ashen Dawn retaliating against my Crimson Towers, doing some damage to them. Over here, my own Ashen Dawn are just double marching up. So what's happened in that previous activation is that he's eliminated the Crimson Tower Knight that was sitting here, and I can now, in my following turn, I can use these Bowmen here to reform and get out of the way, and these Ashen Dawn can just charge into that slot there and finish off his Ashen Dawn, and then we are good to go. Over here, all right, so we have the Theist Priest using some Holy Fire on his unit, on his men-at-arms. Or, no, I think what we opted to do was actually to cast Blessed on the Militia and use the Fragment, because then we can just charge through here and wipe out these men-at-arms. At this point, I'm actually okay with the trade, because if he now wipes out my Militia with his Crimson Towers, I have my own Crimson Towers and Ashen Dawn and Militia Bowmen to kind of beat him up on this flank. So I'm okay with this particular trade. Right, so going into the following turn, I will go with my Priest and my Militia first, because if I win the roll, I can actually charge his Crimson Tower Knights now, which will deny them the impact hits, which means that he won't wipe out my unit in one go, and it will take him even longer to get onto the left flank here. So if I win the roll, it's pretty much game. So there you can sort of see the outcome. I'll just sort of explain how this is going. So we've got the Ashen Dawn, which are about to hit this spot here, wiping out those 2 models, and then we're going to be able to crush this objective here. If I win the roll, I can actually just come into the flank of this unit. Probably just a reform charge is fine. I don't think I can slip past this unit without the reform. But then these guys are just going nowhere for ages. In the middle here, I've got Defense 4 against his Gilded Legion. He's going to pop out a lot of attacks here, but remember, he doesn't have a Relentless Drill, so this unit's going to survive for a little bit. And on this side, I've just got the Ashen Dawn, which is going to score for the rest of the game, basically. I've even got the small unit of crossbows able to shoot into the flank of the Gilded Legion, so that's going to whittle them down. So it's going to give him a smaller window of time in the late game to come back onto the board. He does win the roll, though. So what you've got here is the Crimson Tower Knights charging into the Militia and deleting them, as you'd expect them to. In fact, the rolls are low, so the Priest has somehow managed to get something going here. What's actually had to happen is that he's actually reformed the Crimson Tower Knights to slip past the Gilded Legion because they were blocking him, so a bit of a traffic jam there. So the impact hits without Blessed weren't enough to destroy the entire unit of Militia. He rolled a bit low. So this is going to stall him out for a bit, where I still have my guys just sitting there. On this side, he's got his Ashen Dawn able to bash my my Crimson Towers pretty badly, but of course that allows me to get in there. My Priory Commander going for the challenge, going for the duel against his Imperial officer, hilariously, and he decides, I think, not to accept, so he has to reroll ones on Resolve now. On this side, we've got Crimson Tower Knights attacking back at the Gilded Legion, doing a few wounds, but not very much. Then we have the Ashen Dawn destroying the objective on his side of the battlefield and charging these crossbows, who basically are wiped. So I'll just be able to score with impunity from here. The Gilded Legion, obviously getting out their spears and thrashing these knights, but he's actually losing a couple of stands now. He's gone from 6 down to 4, and the knights are kind of holding strong here. I lose most of 2 stands, and he's still going to be taking some more time to get past that. If you look at the photo from the top down, he's decided to go for a combat reform, so he's spread out because he's got Drill Master, so 5 attacks each once he does this, but he won't get inspired, so that does cut me down to 2 stands. On this side, we've got the Militia trying to get a bit of damage on the Crimson Towers, but obviously not very effectively. They have used their Fragment already. My crossbows in a brilliant position here, just move into the forest and are able to shoot point-blank range into the rear here of the Gilded Legion, which actually does a surprising amount of damage because they've got AP1 and they've got the additional burst. So it's very good that they waited in that early stage of the game where you saw me just keeping them at my table edge and bringing them in when they had an actual opportunity to do work. The Bowmen now turning around, so they reform, they move out of the way of the Ashen Dawn so I can charge his unit, and they're going to be able to sort of finish off his unit of crossbows later on. That clears the way for my Ashen Dawn to charge his, and of course we've got the impact hits, and we've got the 19 attacks with Cleave 1, and this absolutely murders his side there. So Ashen Dawn versus Ashen Dawn, the painted unit versus the unpainted unit. So then we move off over to the next turn where I have my Militia Bowmen to go first. They want to march charge his crossbows because his crossbows actually have an opportunity to shoot my Militia, which have a couple of wounds left, and they're in combat with the Crimson Tower Knights. So I don't want him to be able to get a free march charge with the Crimson Towers over there. So he does, unfortunately for me, he does win the roll and he's able to mash those guys and then charge the objective and wipe that out. So he will actually be able to score here. Fortunately for me, though, I can actually block him with my Militia Bowmen or go with the original plan to attack his crossbows. He's down to 2 Crimson Towers and a Priory Commander, and I've still got 3 Ashen Dawn. So I think the Ashen Dawn can handle the Crimson Tower Knights without any trouble. With that in mind, I have charged the flank here of these crossbows, and that is able to basically wreck them. Even though the Militia, like at Clash 1, you know, all I really needed was a couple of hits to get through, and that managed to work. So just going back a step, from this point, if I charge the crossbows, which I have, and then I win the roll next turn, I can reform and charge the side of the Crimson Towers. That'll block them off for the Knights to get in really comfortably. Okay, on this side, Gilded Legion versus the Crimson Tower Knights, still a bit of a maul, but it does get me down to the 2 stands which we were talking about. I then have the Ashen Dawn wiping out the crossbows. I have lost a stand, but this is able to finish them off. I only really need 2 stands at this point. The crossbows still continuing to do very good work. They're able to aim and shoot now directly into combat, and this kills a whole bunch more of the Gilded Legion. On this side, we have the reform and the march with the Ashen Dawn. I'm perfectly happy for him to charge me with his Crimson Towers because they are not going to be able to get much work done here. Even with Brutal Impact 2, you know, the Terrifying is ignored due to Fearless, and the Ashen Dawn are going to be able to mop them up and score on that zone as well. So the very first card we want to go with is the Ashen Dawn to charge his Crimson Tower Knights to make it even more secure there, even more of a foregone conclusion. overview of the battlefield, you can see that on the right-hand side, my Ashen Dawn on this side are just scoring every turn now. I might actually even win this combat if the crossbows are able to continue doing good work, because he's only got a couple of stands plus the officer, and I've still got 4 wounds left on that stand of Crimson Tower Knights there. Over here, if he charges me, he shouldn't be able to win that, and if I win the roll, I just come into the flank with those bowmen. So he does win the roll, and he does indeed charge the Ashen Dawn, but he doesn't inflict enough damage, to be honest. So over here, we've got the Gilded Legion fighting off against the Priory Commander, but on this side, we've got the Militia shooting at the Crimson Towers, hilariously, and somehow we managed to beat the Gilded Legion. Even though they are thought of as the direct counter to cavalry, the Heavy Knights were able to pass so many armor saves. There was one turn where they just passed almost everything, which was just shocking. I like rolled 13 armor saves, and I got like 12 of them, which is kind of like insane. So the dice were favouring me generally this game, but that's pretty much it. We mopped up in the centre, and the Ashen Dawn then attacked back and just completely eliminate all of the Crimson Tower Knights, and that is basically it. So by turn 9, I was in the lead by about 6 points, and he doesn't have any regiments left at the stage, so it would have been around about 25 to 30 points at the end. Cool, hope you guys enjoyed this little mirror match between 100 Kingdoms and 100 Kingdoms on Bullwark. It was a bit of a fun one, a bit of a different one, and it was kind of cool to see 2 slightly different lists. At the end of the day, I think in this matchup, the more Ashen Dawn you have, the more Mercenary Crossbowmen you have, generally, the better you're going to fare. It's not really a matchup where you can play lots of different styles of 100 Kingdoms and they're all good. You know, there is a bit of a meta. We do need a bit of a patch in this game, but hopefully that will come out soon, and I'll also have some more material for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.